Oversight Subcommittee on State and Local Public Assistance Programs will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll for today's attendance?
Chair Wolford.
Here, present.
Representatives Bruck.
Yay.
Cara.
Here.
Cerniglu. Here. Menser.
Here.
Chair, you have 5 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Representative Cara moves to adopt the minutes from March 5th, 2026 meeting. Hearing no objection, the minutes are adopted. Well, good morning to everyone that's here today. Thank you, members of our committee. Thank you for being here. Well, I guess you have to be here, but thanks for being here. I want to thank the team from the Department of Health and Human Services and OIG for being here today. Over the last several months, this subcommittee has spent a lot of time digging into how Michigan's food assistance programs and the system actually works. We have heard from auditors, investigators, and program administrators, and the one thing that kept coming up again and again was the way that the applications begin in the MyBridges system and the role of self-attestation and how that plays out in that process. Right now, the system and the role for self-attestation is a fascinating topic for me and many others in the state of Michigan. Right now, someone can start this process by applying for benefits with a very limited information provided on the upfront. A lot of verification that confirms whether someone qualifies happens later through document request and then follow up by eligibility specialists. That approach may make the system easier to access in that moment, but it also raises some pretty basic questions. And that is, are we doing enough on the front end to make sure that this information coming in is accurate before the benefits are approved? This question matters because Michigan's SNAP payment error rate is still above the federal benchmark used to determine whether the state has whether the state has to start sharing more of this program's administration cost. Today's conversation is really about understanding how the process works and how it is practiced, what safeguards already exist, where the gaps may be, and whether there are ways to strengthen verification earlier in the process without creating unnecessary barriers for people who truly qualify for these programs. I appreciate the department coming to walk us through this today, and with that, I would like to turn it over to Doug Woodard with OIG.
Thank you, Chairman Wolford. Thank you, committee, for inviting us here today. It is my pleasure to provide information regarding how the Office of Inspector General for Health and Human Services assists the department in maintaining integrity and accountability in the administration of the Food Assistance Program. If you hear me say FAP today, that's Food Assistance Program. Our mission is to assist the department in maintaining integrity and accountability in the administration of its health and human services programs and to ensure appropriate and efficient use of available public resources. In addition to investigating cases of alleged fraud, waste, and abuse in the programs administered by the department, we also make referrals for prosecution, review administrative policies, practices, and procedures, and make recommendations to improve program integrity and accountability. We accept allegations of potential fraud, waste, and abuse through email, a website, and a toll-free hotline. The landscape of public benefits fraud is a dynamic and ever-changing environment. Our staff consistently develop innovative and creative ways to identify, prevent, and combat fraud, waste, and abuse. We utilize a multitude of complex analysis, predictive analytics, and data mining solutions to uncover potential fraud. Roughly half of our investigations come from data analytics. Our investigators use analytics information to focus their efforts to areas with the greatest risk and return, leading to recoveries and discouraging future abuse. We utilize data mining strategies, including data matches, to identify fraud in MDHHS programs. Over the years, we've developed data sharing agreements with several other state agencies that allow us to use their data to identify potential fraud within our programs. I've listed 3 examples of data scenarios that we utilize regularly. Our data analytics tools are adjusted frequently because the bad actors often change their behaviors to avoid detection. OIG collaborates with Economic Stability Administration with daily communications between our agents and eligibility specialists, and we assist MDHHS with policy and procedure development to ensure program integrity. Through our front-end eligibility program, we partner with the local office staff when an application has discrepancies or appears suspicious. Local office staff refer suspicious applications to OIG, and our investigators confirm the accuracy of the income, asset, and household composition information disclosed by the applicant. Of the 17,000 application investigations that we performed last fiscal year, over 8,000 were fee investigations, resulting in almost 5,000 of these suspicious applications to be denied, reduced, or withdrawn. In addition to fee investigations, in fiscal year 2025, we completed over 3,600 investigation dispositions in the food assistance program, identifying $7.7 million in fraud. As a result, we saved the department almost $31 million in public assistance benefits in the food assistance program. Over the past few years, bridge card cloning fraud has affected thousands of Michigan bridge card holders. Thieves place a skimmer on top of a store's credit card reader to copy the bridge card information and PIN. They transfer the data to an unauthorized card and use it to steal the balance of that cardholder's bridge card. We developed algorithms and data tools for early detection of compromised accounts and skimmer locations. Our EBT skimmer analysis uses geolocation data and recipient shopping patterns to identify potential placement of skimmers at retail stores. And we partner with USDA OIG when we identify skimmers. Even when the government was shut down last year, we actually sent agents out and pulled skimmers off of devices, with USDA being furloughed. These analytic activities have resulted in the detection and confiscation of 33 skimmers at Michigan retailers and have safeguarded over 56,000 individual bridge card accounts and almost $10 million in food stamp funds. OIG conducts investigations of food assistance program crimes and/or intentional program violations. Criminal investigations are presented to state and county prosecutors for consideration of prosecution. This list represents the relevant fraud statutes that are commonly utilized to prosecute fraud in the food assistance program. During 25, almost 200 felony warrants were authorized by county, state, and federal prosecutors involving our programs. In addition to criminal convictions, these are the penalties associated with an individual who commits a crime and/or intentional program violation involving FAP. Criminals fraudulently acquire and use stolen identities to obtain MDHHS public assistance program benefits. This photo was taken during one of our investigations. Notice the bad actor included a sticker with the relevant PIN number on each bridge card to keep them straight. OIG has received a referral from an identity theft victim who claimed they never applied for SNAP benefits. OIG's investigation revealed a suspect had stolen over 30 additional identities. The suspect was charged and convicted of computers using to commit a crime, identity theft, welfare fraud over $500, and financial transaction device false statements of identity. The suspect was sentenced to jail and was ordered to pay $161,625 in restitution. Another identity theft case involved a referral from a MDHHS case specialist. This case involved a food assistance program application being submitted under a deceased person's social security number. From this referral, OIG discovered several other benefit cases tied to this suspect. The suspect was charged and pled guilty to identity theft and welfare fraud. The suspect was sentenced to probation in order to pay $19,375 in restitution. OIG's analytics section identified a case involving several identity theft victims who applied for benefits in Michigan but had no ties to our state. A suspect was identified utilizing data analytics, which identified common denominators and patterns in the benefit cases. Upon interview, the suspect confessed to fraudulently obtaining benefits. They were placed into the AG diversion program and signed a repayment agreement for $9,454. Here are MDHHS OIG's identity theft investigation results for fiscal year 2025 related to the food assistance program. The results I've shared here today are made possible by the innovation and dedication of the employees of OIG. And if you're interested in reading more about our accomplishments, I've included a link to our annual reports.
Thank you. Appreciate you. I have a few questions for you. You mentioned on slide 14 that the Social Security, you were able to find fraud by looking at the Social Security number, and that was able to help you identify theft. My question is, knowing that on the front end of the website, it's name, address, et cetera, just those few things that you need. If we would have on the front end of the website where they add the Social Security number, would that have helped stop fraud at the beginning instead of waiting until the work was done on the back end? Would that help? Do you see that would help on the front end?
Potentially, it could help. They have to run that Social Security number with the name on a batch process. So before they're going to approve the application, they're still going to need that Social Security number. So it would make sense to collect it up front if that was allowed. That would certainly make sense. It might streamline the process a little quicker. But from my desk, they do adequately run that name Social Security match through Social Security Administration. So there is a match done before those benefits are turned on.
Right, but that's done on the back end.
It's done before. It's done in the process of the application.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. And then, how often do you generate fraud referrals from your own investigations?
It's roughly half the time. We use our analytics manager is here today, and more than half our work collectively generally comes from their area. So we did 2,002 investigations last year. So I would say roughly 10,000 spitballing here.
Okay.
That would just be a FAP number.
Okay.
Certainly when you add in Medicaid and other programs, it's much higher than that.
Okay.
But for FAP, roughly 10,000 cases we self-generate.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And by comparison, how often do you get referrals from MDHHS eligibility specialists?
I think I had that in one of our slides, that when I talked about fee, yeah, we completed 8,142 fee investigations last year just on FAP. And those would have been referrals made by the local offices.
Okay, thank you so much. Last question I have for you, is it easier for you to investigate fraud if you have more documents available to confirm application information at the time of the referral?
Yes.
Okay, that's an easy answer, thank you. There any questions for Mr. Woodard?
I'll just say.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. And I did have one quick question. I know you showed the pile of cards on there, and I know that fraud is a serious issue. There's clerical errors and then there's fraud. There's a big difference between the two. With the changes, putting the chip cards in that we, as a legislature, have passed in order for SNAP benefits or FAP benefits to have the chip, do you expect to see those piles of cards that are being swiped and that type of fraud occurring once that occurs, once we have chip cards?
I think it'll reduce it significantly. And just take the time to thank you all for whoever voted on that and got that in. We do appreciate that. We really do. That's going to help us immensely. The chip card, it's low-hanging fruit out there right now, and we're one of the first states. I think we're the first state in the Midwest, but we're probably in the top 5.
Well, we appreciate your work that you're doing, and we certainly want to clean up fraud. So thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there being no questions, as we would say in the military, you're dismissed. You're good to go. And now we'll hear from. Thank you very much for being here today, Mr. Woodard. We appreciate you. And now we will hear from Mr. Knezek from the Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you for being here, Marine, and thank you for the challenge coin that you gave me today.
My pleasure.
Era.
I need to bring up the other presentation, so give me a second here.
Also, what do you have planned time-wise with your presentation?
I have 25 slides. We were told, I think, maybe 30 to 40 minutes is what would be allotted. If at any point you feel like I'm going too slow,
Sure.
I'm
I don't know
receptive
who
to
told you
feedback.
that, but the chair's going to give you 20 to 25.
All right, I'll chug along. I'll chug
all right,
along.
we appreciate it. Thank you.
Can somebody help me? I'm like the worst 39-year-old when it comes to, thank you. Before I start, I'll just say how much I also appreciate Doug being here with me today. OIG is a phenomenal partner to DHHS and the work that we do, and you can see some more of our excellent OIG staff that are seated behind us here that help us combat fraud and the issues that we're here to talk about today. So I just want to start by expressing my gratitude for the OIG as well. In the interest of time, Mr. Chair, again, my name is David Knezek. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. I will skip over the mission pieces as well as the summaries of the program. I know I went over these slides the last time that I was here. Of course, we know who receives SNAP across the state of Michigan. 43% of them have children, 51% someone with a disability, 36% an older adult, 78% of which are working and have earned income. I'll skip over again the economic impact in the interest of time, but again, you can see the impact that we have on our local economy, the return on investment that we get from SNAP dollars, and then the community impact as well. I'll start here with the SNAP safeguards. And I appreciate what was said in the beginning about acknowledging the difference between fraud and payment error rates and so on and so forth. And so what we just simply laid out here for the members of the committee is that breakdown. Fraud being the intentional misuse of benefits. This is where the OIG comes in. Payment error rates being associated with the technical accuracy of those benefit calculations, all of the information that's being built into the calculation that we do to determine your benefit rate. That, of course, is overviewed through our quality control process internal to the department, and then the eligibility verification process, making sure that the applicant's information is accurate before those benefits are issued. I think that's the interest of the committee that's gathered here today. I'll say one thing, too, briefly before I continue. I think that when the department says things like front end and back end, and what I hear from the committee about front end and back end, I think we're using the same words, but we're talking about different instances in that process. When what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, from the committee is that front end would be before application, back end would be after application is submitted. When the department talks about front end and back end, we're talking about before benefits are approved and after benefits are approved. So I'm going to try personally to avoid that type of language here today, just so that we're clear about where I'm standing and what we're talking about. What I wanted to do was help, I think, walk through some sort of a comparison to how this works. And the best that my team and I were able to come up with was this mortgage comparison around pre-approval being akin to you submitting that initial application for benefits. If you apply for that mortgage and you get your pre-approval, that allows you to go off and put an offer on a house. It doesn't mean you get approval for the mortgage. You still have to go through the application process. The mortgage company will request those verifications. They'll go through the processing. They'll do the verification of your income, et cetera, and then you will be approved for and get that mortgage. Similarly, on the SNAP side of things, you can submit an application, as the chair said, with the federally required minimum information. That does not mean that you get benefits. If you give us your name, your address, and your signature, you can start the process of applying. That does not mean that you get benefits. We still have to go through that verification process prior to benefit issuance and to verify the information that was given to us before we're able to make a decision. Doug talked about this previously. I just wanted to briefly highlight some upcoming accuracy resources that have come out of our prior conversations here in committee, the report that was recently issued by this committee. As Doug noted, Michigan will be the first state in the Midwest to implement the chipped cards, one of the first 5 states in the nation to do that. From my seat, a phenomenal example of the great work that we can do when we work collaboratively with the legislature. This is something that the department has wanted to do for some time. Because the legislature stepped up, put that money into the budget for this year and the accompanying boilerplate, we've been able to get it done. And so we're currently on place to have those chipped EBT cards fully implemented by October. I think the first one gets mailed out in June here. And we believe, too, that these cards will assist with future fraud prevention. I'll also say that the card that you're looking at there, that is the new chipped card design. And so you're the first to see what it's going to look like for individuals across the state of Michigan.
That's very encouraging, and thank you for your compliments, because this came from our committee,
Yeah.
and it was great to see that get done from all parties included. So it's nice to see that. Do you have an idea, and this may be a question that can be answered later, but I'd prefer it now, but do you have an idea percentage-wise of what you think that this chip-enabled card will do to that error rate?
I don't have a number off the top of my head, Rep, in terms of what it will relate to, but because the payment error rate is not related, the payment error rate is related to overpayments or underpayments relative to the benefit application processing. Mm-hmm. I don't think that the chipped card will have a demonstrable impact on the payment error rate, but when you get into Doug's world and OIG's world around folks that are committing intentional fraud, that is where I think you're going to see the benefit.
Mm-hmm. Great, okay, thank you.
Yep, but to your point now, and another good testament to the work that this committee has done, you mentioned in your most recent report the National Accuracy Clearinghouse and a desire for Michigan to join the NAC. The good thing that we have to report here today is that we are on track to implement participation in the National Accuracy Clearinghouse in July of this year. All states have to be participating per the federal regulations by October 2027, and so Michigan is I wish I could say to you, hey, we're running ahead of schedule here. This is the schedule that was given to us by the federal government. They laid out which states are joining when. Michigan is scheduled to join in July 2026, and so that will be live here in a few short months.
Wonderful. And that is something, though, that has existed prior to the mandate of this being done by that time frame. So it is something that we could have taken advantage of before now, correct?
Off the top of my head, Rep, I don't know. I just know that Michigan was mandated to join by July 2026 and will be joined by July 2026.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. The next piece here talks about the federal regulations around the minimum information that's needed to receive the application. It was mentioned prior to my testimony here, could we collect more, should we collect more in the initial application stage? The federal regulations that we rely on state pretty clearly about we have to be able to accept a name, an address, and a signature of an individual in that household in order to start that application process. Again, that does not mean that you are going to get benefits simply because you give those 3 pieces of information to us. That is the federally required information that we need in order to immediately accept an application, as it spells out there in the CFR. I'll note, though, that in the past, the department has tried to make more things required before the submission of that application. We are frequently audited by the federal government on this piece. Most recently, we had tried to mandate the inclusion of an email address in order for somebody to submit their application. The federal government came back to us, put us on a corrective action plan, and said that we are not allowed to do that. And so, again, I just want to be clear that while we have to accept name, address, and signature to receive that application, there is still a very intensive verification process that has to take place prior to benefit issuance. Wanted to talk.
Quick
Yes, sir.
question for you on that. I know that you'd mentioned the word mandate, and I partially agree with you on that. But we've had multiple meetings in person, also Zoom with the USDA, with the Intergovernment Affairs, the SNAP Integrity Office, special agents, and you're talking about stuff that was under a Biden era. How much are you working with the Trump administration and looking at some of those federal requirements as it relates to whether it's mandated or, there's certain mandates, but then just as we've been told from those departments that we can add to, right? So that's the basic requirement, but we could add on the front end a social security number, add some of the other things that you do on the, I know we didn't want to go on the front end, back end talk, but the back end, as we would call it, having some of those things on the front so that your workers wouldn't be inundated with as much work to do on the back end, 30 days to process a claim. I talked about this last week, thinking about a mom and her children or a dad with his children trying to get benefits, and we're doing stuff on the back end where maybe some of those things could have been taken care of on the front end by allowing them to add those things on the front, which I know would speed things up. Obviously, it's a reason why you had mentioned how the mortgage company kind of does a pre-approval, but then I look at other places that require or allow for a social security number. We see banks, FAFSA, you name it, Xbox. I went to Cracker Barrel the other day and I went to pay my bill online and I had to log in with an email before I could give them my money. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I think everyone here knows that there are things that we can add to that, even though there's a mandate. So we can talk about that more throughout the slides, but I would like to see some of that done to where you're still meeting federal requirements, but also hopefully helping your department, just as we did with the chip-enabled cards. So, thank you.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. And there's actually some things I think towards the end of the slide that talk a little bit about how we're thinking creatively about getting more information in that initial application stage. So I'll talk about that. Again, in terms of our interactions with the federal administration, and I could tell you this story offline, I kind of reached out and asked this question directly about hard stops, essentially. Can there be hard stops in place so that people do not submit an application until A, B, and C is received in that application process? The answer that we were given was a very clear no, and a reference back to the CFR that I have displayed on the screen here that says that we have to tell households that they have an immediate right to file their application as long as it contains the name, the address, and signature. If you're having conversations with other people within the federal administration, you're receiving other guidance, I would love to have that conversation with you offline, because if we're being told two different things, that's obviously not in anyone's best interest. So I would welcome that conversation with you.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing as it relates to the CFR that you talked about is, I guess, why aren't we allowing? Because you can allow it. You can allow. You just can't stop somebody from filing, but you can allow on that front end, on that website, the ability for someone to put in their social security number and even, adding documents ahead of time, which I think would be great. It'd be good for your department, would be good for investigations, giving people that opportunity. And I think it would also speed up that process, right, for your folks on the back end. So I just want to make it very clear, you can allow that.
What I'm hearing is an interest in making sure that perhaps additional fields are included in the application process. Is that what you're saying, Rep?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, we can have that conversation.
Awesome.
Happy to.
Great.
Appreciate you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. I'll jump into what I kind of hope is some of the meat and potatoes here around the verification. So when you're going through that application process, we want to go through and make sure that we're verifying things like your identity, like your earned income sources, your other income sources, your citizen status, medical expenses, et cetera. So I want to walk you through, and it might be a bit long-winded, but I just want to make sure we have a very clear picture here around verification of identity. DHHS does an automated match, as Doug spoke about, with the Social Security Administration, completed with every application, anytime a member is added to that household group or any time that there's a change in someone's information is reported. We can also use a government photo ID in order to verify identity. We use state and federal deceased matches to ensure that deceased individuals are not incorrectly included in benefit determinations. The state deceased match is received daily. The federal deceased match is received monthly. We use the Public Assistance Reporting Information System, the Paris Interstate Match, which is a quarterly data matching service used to determine if a client is receiving duplicate benefits in 2 or more states. So maybe they applied in Michigan and then tried to apply in Ohio or Indiana. We, of course, have our Vital Records interface within our Michigan Vital Records office in the Department of Health and Human Services, and the MyLogin for their ID verification and credentials. As it relates to earned income, we look at things like pay stubs. We use third-party verification systems like Equifax if need be. We'll complete quarterly wage matches that are cross-matched with the work history records that are submitted by Michigan employers, and then we compare that to the client's gross earnings record within Bridges. We go through state and federal new hire matches to make sure that we receive on a daily basis an exchange of information that's received at the state and federal level to determine if the income sources for active beneficiaries is accurate. We use the child support income system match to provide information received through child support for a child or a primary caretaker. This, of course, would count under the other income side of things. We look at our unemployment system matches. We receive a weekly file from the Michigan UIA containing the payments that are distributed to MDHHS clients. We also use the automated match with the Social Security Administration, as I talked about previously, and then a lottery match with the Michigan Bureau of Lottery to make sure that on a weekly basis we're receiving information about lottery winners from the previous week, and a monthly match to ensure that all individuals are being reported who have won anything within the lottery. Relative to non-citizen status, as folks know, there are some non-citizen categories that are eligible for SNAP benefits. We require paper or physical documentation and verification of that. All non-citizens are required to provide that paper or physical documentation of their immigration status at application and at any time that their change in status occurs. And then we also use the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements program, SAVE, from the Federal Department of Homeland Security, in addition to that paper verification, to make sure that their non-citizen information is automatically verified through the system. And then on the medical expenses side of things, paper and physical verification, as well as third-party verification that we might receive from the medical provider. This is my last slide on the other verifications that we do, but again, want to give you a sense of all the work that goes into this verification process relative to your household composition, which is, of course, critical in determining what that maximum benefit could potentially be, less your expenses. We'll complete address matches when that application is received. We do cross-case screening of the individuals on that application when we receive it as well. We have system edits that prevent individuals from receiving the same benefits but on multiple cases. The Paris match that I spoke about previously, the National Accuracy Clearinghouse that I spoke about previously, the death matches that I spoke about previously, as well as state and federal incarceration matches. And then finally, the EDRs exchange. So this is an exchange with the Federal Electronic Disqualified Recipient Service, for all clients who are applying for FAP and are being added to a case. And so, looking at address and residency, I spoke about the address match, the Paris match already, the automated match with the Social Security Administration, the state and federal incarceration matches I spoke of previously. On the citizenship side of things, again, automated match with the Social Security Administration, our vital records interfaces. If there's any conflict, again, we'll go above and beyond looking at the birth registry match, you name it, to make sure that we have all the information that we need. And then looking at their shelter expenses, pulling in the utility bills that might be used when someone is applying for a different benefit. And so if you're applying for state emergency relief and we're seeing your shelter expenses there and you're reporting something different when you're applying for food benefits, we're able to cross-match those to make sure that they're accurate. Again, the address match to verify if others may be sharing those expenses, as well as an interface with the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, MSHDA. So when we talk about verifications, yes, you can submit the application with those three things. This is what we need to verify before we say, yes, approved, and those benefits go out the door. You spoke previously, Rep, about how you had applied for benefits using a fake name and a fake address. You did not receive benefits for that because we went through the verification process. We weren't able to verify the information that was submitted to us. That, I think, is a reflection of how the system works to make sure that money is not going out the door when it's not supposed to. Just again, a walkthrough of the SNAP application process. So again, we have our application stage. You can hop on My Bridges, you can fill it out. You can fill out that paper application. And then finally, this is where, again, the client is able to self-attest to that application. After that application comes into the department, we will go through the process of conducting a phone interview or an in-person interview in our local offices. We'll conduct all of our inquiries like I had just spoken about previously, Social Security, citizenship, unearned income, et cetera. Go through our verification processes around earned income, self-employment expenses, and then, as you noted, we have that certification that we have to issue within 30 days.
Awesome, thank you. Before you go on, as it relates to the website, the idea of that is to show how the front end, but most importantly, how a nearly $17 million website is not being utilized to its full capacity. And so those are our concerns on that, right? You have 16 point some million dollars spent on a website that taxpayers paid for that could be doing a better job for you and your department. Having said that, have you ever had a benefit, someone receive a benefit just one time, or how many times could have slipped through the cracks? Have we caught every single time, or has there ever been a time where someone would have gotten benefits from front end, back end, however it be, and received benefits that they shouldn't have gotten?
Well, I think that what we have, the processes through the My Bridges application, all of the verifications that we have built into the process prior to there being a benefit issuance. And then if there's any instance where the information that's come into us seems off or doesn't match up, then we have our partners at OIG. As Doug spoke about, 8,000 instances last year where our staff was able to catch benefit information that felt inaccurate.
I'm specifically talking about the ones that you couldn't catch. Has there been a time, could there be, have been a time where one slipped through the cracks and somebody got benefits that they didn't deserve? Has that ever happened?
Has it ever happened, Rep? I mean, I think any reasonable person would say that there can be errors that happen. What I think the takeaway for me is the fact that the department takes this very seriously. We've tried to build in really robust interventions on the front end, as well as interventions on the back end, and work with our partners in law enforcement to make sure that those are caught.
So then you could agree that, basically admitting that accidental things can get through the cracks, people can get benefits they didn't deserve or rate, having the ability to also have people register to vote, that could also been a vote that got or slipped through the cracks because of that website. So again, I think that front end is very, very important on that for those reasons, for those potential times of, I guess it would be called human error rate, where something slips through the cracks. Even one, I think, is important, I'm sure, and I would like to get a report from you at some point from your office of how many have been approved after the fact, and then you had to go back, or ones that you didn't. I would appreciate that. But
Sure.
Thank you for bringing up the website.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Again, I spoke about the Social Security number. A valid Social Security number is required before we can issue SNAP benefits. We go through and make sure that we are matching those applications nightly with Social Security information. If you are not willing to provide a Social Security number to the department, then you are not eligible for benefits. And if and when a specialist determines that that Social Security number is questionable, that is when we would make that referral over to the OIG for an investigation. Relative to determining citizenship or lawful presence, again, a person has to be a U.S. citizen or have an acceptable non-citizen status in order to be eligible for SNAP. Individuals who don't meet that requirement or who refuse to indicate their status are disqualified. You can see on here, we listed out the number of reasons that are given to us from the federal government that are not sufficient reasons to question someone's citizenship, their appearance, their accent, their English proficiency, their employment as a farm worker, or what their name might sound like. I spoke previously about the SAVE verification process. Again, systematic alien verification for entitlements. This enables our federal, state, and local government agencies and licensing bureaus to obtain immigration status information needed to determine a non-citizen applicant's eligibility for many types of public benefits. It's intergovernmental. It's an information sharing initiative designed to aid our specialists in determining a non-citizen applicant's immigration status, again, to ensure that only eligible non-citizens receive federal, state, and local public benefits. You see the different class codes that we have listed up there around refugees, Amerasian, or asylees, et cetera. These are the type of verifications that we go relative to an individual's non-citizen status. And then again, the redetermination process, right? You apply at some point for your SNAP benefits. 12 months later, typically, you're up for your redetermination process. Very similar to the initial application process itself. You can visit My Bridges. You can submit a paper redetermination at the local office. That specialist will reach out to the applicant by phone or in person to complete an interview. They'll go through that redetermination process with the individual, ask questions if more information is needed. They'll request any of those required verifications, and then a decision on that redetermination has to be made before the end of the original SNAP certification period or within 30 days of the redetermination rate, which tracks on the initial application process. Same thing when it comes to adding a member of your SNAP household. You may have somebody new that's moving into the house. You may have adopted somebody. You may be fostering somebody. You may have given birth to a new child. And so adding a member to that SNAP case, again, we go through and we walk through what that verification process looks like here. I'm going to wrap up here with some more updates on work that we've been doing since our last conversation here in front of the committee. Things that I think you were speaking to earlier, Representative, around how we can get more information on the front end, even if it's not being required. And so first, I'll talk about that client information submission. We have started doing automated monthly change reporting requirement reminders to all beneficiaries across the state. It could be a text message, it could be an email. It's a reminder on a monthly basis from the department. If anything changed, you have to report it to us. And we've seen some, again, good benefits from that on the front end. Simplifying our My Bridges language to help people understand what it is we're asking for and why when you're going through that application process. We might have technically accurate language, but if it's not easily digestible, it's not doing anybody any good. And so we simplified the language, and then we added in these prompts. This is where I'm trying to get to, Mr. Chair, around we're putting prompts now into My Bridges that say, if you give me X, I can process this benefit faster. If you give me Y, I'll be able to cut down on the churn of coming back to you and asking for more information. I'll get to the quantitative numbers around that here in a second. But those prompts that we've built into MyBridges, we've seen demonstrable results of that as well. And then also the deployment of a new, we talked about this last time, optical character recognition technology, so that if you have that pay stub coming in, I spoke last time about you could be typing on the thing, you meant to hit 4, but you hit a 7. The optical character recognition pulls that information off of the pay stub, auto-populates it into our system so that it's 100% accurate. In terms of the client interview support, we have redesigned and already launched a new interview guide for our eligibility specialists. I spoke earlier about how every single applicant for SNAP benefits has to go through the interview process. We went through, took a look at what we were asking individuals and then what the quality control team was asking of individuals to see if there was a gap between the two that resulted in one or both parties getting different information that led to negative results relative to error rate. So we've brought those questions into alignment with one another. We've launched a redesigned interview guide. This is being used statewide now by all of our eligibility specialists, as well as some new interview training for them to help people understand what it is we're asking for and why. The example I think I used last time was, you might ask the question, do you have any rental expenses? You live in an apartment, what's your rent? That client might say $900 because that's what they pay out of pocket, and in their mind, that's accurate. But when you get into the details of that rental expense, it might be $50 for a pet fee, which is not countable towards that expense. And so it changes what that final determination is. So we're trying to ask more targeted and clarifying questions through that interview process to make sure that we get accurate information prior to approval. We also launched, this has been candidly a bit of my baby for the last few months here, our new resource hub to create a single source of truth for our employees around all of the resources that are available to them to make sure that things are being done quickly and accurately, bringing in the policy, redesigning the language of that policy, again, so that it's digestible, bringing in any of the memos, the clarifying language that we get from the feds, putting it all in one single place so it's as easy as possible for our staff to do the work that they need to do. I think it's what you spoke of earlier, Mr. Chair, of what we can do to make it easier for the staff to get to an accurate determination. And then the launch of these mini trainings that we're launching periodically throughout the department could be 5, 10, 15 minutes, pop on, quick refresher, make sure that we're keeping our staff up to date on the latest and greatest within the SNAP benefit processing. Our new statewide resource sharing to smooth workloads, so folks might know it's a totally different committee hearing around universal caseload and how we go through the process of working and making determinations on these processes. We're at a place now that because universal caseload is statewide, if I have a major influx of cases in, say, Wayne County, for example, that's starting to result in a backlog, but I'm in Calhoun County and they're humming along and have time left at the end of their day, the staff from Calhoun County will be able to hop in there, help on the Wayne County staff, and again, make sure that we're using all of the resources and all of the staff that we have available to us in the best and most efficient way possible so that we can avoid any backlogs and any time spent looking for work. On the accuracy focus updates, I just spoke about UCL. UCL goes in and makes sure what are you processing, how quickly are you processing it, how much workflow are you getting through a different day. We've built into UCL now productivity monitoring around if I'm a specialist who's reviewing a queue that Doug had just reviewed and I catch a review that Doug makes, or a mistake that Doug makes, not that Doug makes mistakes, but if I later in the process catch a mistake that happened prior to me, that's a recognition and attributable to my work product and my output for the rest of the day. So we're incentivizing our staff catching errors that might have happened along the process. And then finally, this upstream sort of error correction, pre-certification case read processes. This is something that we recently launched statewide. So using an AI tool prior to benefits ever being issued to individuals, we are doing a pre-certification AI-enabled case read to see if there are any errors that are being made prior to that benefit issuance. The name of that AI case reader is MyCara. It's not named after anybody in particular. The case accuracy review assistant, I had pushed very hard, Mr. Chair, for the workflow optimization and oversight layer for food operations review and determination, but my Wolfer just does not roll off the tongue as well as that. So
I'm sure you would not have gotten approval for that.
And then finally, a bit on the quantitative side of what we're seeing. So all of the changes that I just spoke about since going back to December, simply by doing those pre-certification case reads, we've done 17,500 of them just in the last 3 months. This is a massive improvement using an AI tool over what can be done by an individual person or an individual team over the course of a year. And so 17,500 case reads that have caught $150,000 worth of potential payment errors prior to them going out the door. So if we catch it prior to it going out the door, we ensure that it never impacts or gets built into that error rate. So we're seeing encouraging numbers on that. And then of those total pre-certification reads, we identified payment errors of some type. It might not be financial in nature. It could be in other categories in roughly 5% of the cases. Because we have an agency error rate and a client error rate roughly between 5 to 6%, we think that that number tracks relatively accurately and is encouraging. The other two numbers that I'll say here before I wrap up, 65% increase in multiple changes reported at once between the first week of January compared to the first week of December of last year. And so what this means is by building in those prompts, encouraging individuals to give us more, we are seeing a 65% increase in what is being submitted to the department and a 30% increase in client-reported changes as compared to the same time last year. So again, we think that these nudges, as we call them, are bearing some fruit in terms of getting us the information that we need to cut down on that churn. I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, first, I want to say, thank you. It's nice to hear and see some of these results. When we started this work, it was unbelievable of the things that I was called and talked about, not by you, maybe by Doug. No, I'm just teasing. Not by either one of you, but it's encouraging to see what this committee has done and the motivation that it's brought to your department. And so thank you for that. I appreciate it. Representative Bruck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Knezek. You must have been reading my mind because I had a number of questions about the immediate actions that have been taken since the last time we met. And then I also had some workforce questions that I was going to ask. And I really appreciate that accuracy slide. I think it was the second before the last, where you highlighted a number of issues, including that universal caseload and the pre-certification of the AI. I think that's great stuff. Great stuff. I did have a couple more questions, though, just as you guys are working through this. It's been said that about 2/3 of the errors that have occurred are income-related errors. And I guess I want to talk about in that relation, not our but your back end, not our back end, your back end. So once approvals are done and there's payments going out, there's obviously, we had that high error rate, that's your back end, the close at 9 point whatever %, which I think is going to go down with what you're saying here. On those income error rates that they're finding in that monthly sampling where they get the error rate, and they're getting approximately 2/3 are income related. How are you addressing that, or what's that? I didn't see like an immediate fix on that particular thing outside the prompting that you're doing, which is good. What are other things that you're implementing or potentially implementing on that part?
One of the biggest issues that we have around the income pieces in particular is when somebody goes from having no job to a job or receives an increase in pay or benefit at the job that they're currently in, and then they don't report it to us. And so it's not necessarily that the wrong information is being pulled, it's not being told or given to us. And so what we tried to do, like I said earlier, is by giving that monthly prompt, if you had an increase in your salary, if you got a new job, if you changed jobs, whatever it may be, you have to report that to us. The way that I think explained it in the past was, if you are unemployed and you're busting your butt to try and get a job, when you finally get it, the first thought you have is not, I better call DHHS and let them know to update my benefits. We want to make sure that we're doing our part to remind folks that as a condition of receiving those benefits, you have to update us when those changes are made. And so for us, that being the primary driver, it not being reported to us, we're trying to be proactive with our outreach to the beneficiaries.
Okay, thank you. And another question on the expedited request. So it sounds like you're getting the caseload of your workers more equalized with that universal caseload comment that you said. With the expedited, where you only have 7 days, I mean, normally it's 30 days. Like I think maybe historically that was an issue, maybe with overload, and you have to get those requests out the door essentially through verification, sometimes phone, sometimes in person. With the 7-day expedited request, is how are you guys handling those? Is there you still, I don't want to say things are slipping through, but are you able to handle that if somebody clicks on that 7-day request? Is that getting better, I guess, is the question.
I think I'd want to go back just to make sure I've got a quantitative number, just so I'm not making it up. But my anticipation would be that it does get better. But as you noted, the process is a little different because it's expedited. The information that is needed per the federal guidelines relative to the issuance itself, it is a back-end process like you spoke about. And so we're trying to make the improvements around the outreach, the prompts that we build in on the front end to help people understand. Asking for expedited puts additional pressure on us. The more information that we can get from you prior to hitting send on that application, the better we're going to be able to do our jobs. Because if we try to schedule that phone call or that interview and the individual doesn't show up, we have to do a second outreach. And putting that in the mail, sending it out, you're guaranteed to miss the 7-day turnaround at that time. And so there are some pieces of the program and the rules that are coming down from the federal government that make it difficult to meet those guidelines. We're just trying to do what we can prior to that submission of application to increase the information that we get.
Mm-hmm. And on that, on your back end, if it gets through and it's not caught, and the survey, the federal survey that occurs, and they catch it, it's an error. Catching that after your back end, after a slip through, let's say, it's not fraudulent, but it's oversight or clerical error, or just they didn't report correctly. Catching that error before it becomes an error, as you had stated earlier, that's very, very important. And so you think the prompts, that's one way. What's in this verification, cross-check verification, are you expanding that as well?
I don't want to cut you off, Rep. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think what we're going to see the biggest return on investment relative to the case that you're sharing right now is through that AI case reader tool. Imagine, if you will, the large number of people that are applying and receiving benefits relative to a very small pool of workers that are able to go through and do those case reads. I've spoken in the past about how one eligibility specialist in Michigan has roughly 1,000 cases that they're responsible for. It's food, it's cash, it's Medicaid, it's et cetera. So if you as humans are able to go through and read 500 cases a year, 1,000 cases a year, whatever it may be, that AI tool can read absolutely every single one of them and catch everything in real time before those benefits go out the door. The other benefit of that AI tool is, if there's ever some sort of resource constraint that we're up against, we know what are the characteristics of a household that make it more likely for an error to result in a outsized impact on the error rate. So I spoke about this a little bit last time. The largest number of errors are going to occur in 1 or 2 person households, because those are the largest numbers of households that we have applying for benefits. But the place where it's going to hurt us the most relative to our error rate is when you have a large household that's receiving a larger dollar value in benefit, and if you make a mistake on that larger dollar value, it has a disproportionate impact on the error rate. And so if resources were constrained at any point, we could use that AI tool to say, only go look at households that are 3 or larger. Only go look at expedited food cases. Only go look at, you pick the metrics that we know are at a higher likelihood for impacting that error rate. The benefit of where we're operating now, and again, I think it's just a great testament to the partnership that we had with the legislature on this. The money that was appropriated in this year's budget to help us address reducing that error rate is what's allowing us to do the AI case reader tool and all of the reforms that we've talked about here today. And so I think, relative to the question you're asking, that AI case reader tool that we can train to go after specific cases is going to give us the best return on investment to ensure that we avoid mistakes.
Well, I commend you, Mr. Knezek. Great job. Keep up the good work and keep improving.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll keep watching, guaranteed.
I know.
Guaranteed.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Representative Menser.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to kind of reiterate or repeat a few things. With the assistance of this committee, we are going to chip cards. You're using data analytics and algorithms and AI tools along with the OIG to weed out fraud. You are meeting all of the federal requirements that you have to. You are joining the National Accuracy Clearinghouse. You have a very robust verification process that you go through, including interviews. And if you find anything unusual, you are referring them to the OIG. You're doing monthly, training things with your staff, and you are looking at adding more parameters or questions, in the interview process. Is there it seems to me that you are doing everything possible that you can to make sure that these benefits are given out as accurately as possible. In any walk of life, there's going to be an error here or there. You should see my checkbook. But
What's the question,
I
Representative?
commend you for the efforts that you have undertaken and are continuing to undertake to make sure that the Michigan taxpayer money is spent as wisely as possible. So I guess my question is, knowing that you've done all this really great stuff and your partnership with the OIG, what else can this committee do to make your job easier and to help you?
It's a great question, Representative. And when we really kicked off some of our efforts around trying to address the payment error rate, and this predates the enactment of H.R. 1 that put the financial penalties in relative to these issues, we very quickly came up with a massive list of things that we could do in order to help drive down the payment error rate and ensure that we're accurate in our processing. We then went through the process of identifying what is reasonable given the time frame and the constraints that we have around our budget. And so the things that we're doing right now, these are going to be the most impactful relative to driving down the error rate. There might be other, what we used to call in the Marines onesie-twosies that we could do to make an improvement. But in terms of the return on investment, the things that we're doing right now, the changes we're continuing to roll out, we think that these are going to have the biggest impact. Your question about what else could this committee do, I think you're doing it. Engaging with us in a conversation. The rep has been great. You've been great. The vice chair's been great. Casey and I text, when he's got questions. We believe so deeply in the safety net that we provide at DHHS. We believe so deeply in ensuring that it is accurate and that people who actually need the benefits are receiving them. When we have legislative partners that want to work with us to that effect, you're always going to find an open door from us. And so I think you're doing it, Rep, and I know that I and the department really appreciate it.
Great, thank you for that. And so basically what I heard and a takeaway, I know it has a lot of different names, H.R. 1, big beautiful bill, the work from the White House to the State House, this committee, putting some criteria in a magnifying glass to multiple departments across the states has obviously proven to end up being beneficial to our end user, the customer, we the people, those that are getting benefits. Is that correct?
The department has always been engaged in efforts to drive down the payment error rate. I can think of instances going back 3 or 4 years where we flew our staff out to other states in partnership with FNS to identify states that had lower error rates than Michigan to try
But
and
I'm
see
saying
best practices.
that accountability, because of years prior, this accountability has helped your department be more successful in incorporating some of these things.
The
correct?
support of the legislature and the resources that they've given us in order to make the improvements that we're talking about here today, there's no question. We would not have been able to transition to chipped cards without the support of the legislature. We would not be able to do these accuracy at every step interventions without the financial support and partnership of the legislature.
Awesome, thank you. And then Representative Carr has a question, but what does contact look like with employers, as you had mentioned about, somebody not necessarily might reach out and say, hey, I got a job, right? And I don't even necessarily need an answer from you right now if you don't have it, but I'd like you to think on it because I think there might be some potential legislation that we might be able to do to help streamline that as well. So,
Great.
Representative Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I actually have 5 questions, but I'll do my best to be quick. So my first question is, when it comes to the AI being used, I'd say artificial intelligence is a powerful tool, but a dangerous weapon. When we perform these tasks, are we ensuring that that's all that AI is doing and that it's not harvesting that data on these individuals to be kept in a database for the state of Michigan?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And are we committed to continuing to do that?
Yes, I am, and yes, we are.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next question. On the application at the beginning process, the federal government says that you have to get the name and the address and the signature of the
Correct.
person at the household. And is that done online or on paper?
It could be either or. It could be done on paper and mailed to the office, or it could be done online through My Bridges.
How does somebody sign online?
A digital signature, I would imagine.
Is it an e-signature that they're like filling it out with the cursor, or do they just type their name in?
Rep, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to follow up with you and even give you a screenshot of what it looks like.
Sure. And is that a minimum requirement to have that, or is that a maximum allowed amount of information under the code that the federal government requires?
Yep, I'll go back up to the slide here. So at the very bottom of the slide, in plain and prominent language on or near the front page of the application, notification of the household's right to immediately file the application as long as it contains the applicant's name and address and the signature of a responsible household member or the household's authorized representative.
Okay,
That's
perfect.
the CFR we rely on.
So it doesn't say only that information. It says as long as it has that information.
I read it as, as long as it contains their name and address.
So you could do more if you wanted to under what we're seeing in the Code of Federal Regulations there.
As I said earlier, Rep, we've asked the federal government that exact question.
Correct.
What we have been told is no.
When did you ask them that? Because you said earlier, you're right, that you tried to add an email address in there. When did you do that, and on what authority did the federal government say they told you that you can't?
Well, I'll say we didn't try to add the email. We did mandate the email address, and we received a corrective action plan from the federal government for being in violation of their rules. In terms of the date that happened or when, I don't have it off the top of my head, but again, happy to follow up with
Is that
you.
ballpark in the last week, month, year, 2 years ago?
Within the last couple of years.
In the last couple of years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, could we get an answer on when that date was? That
Sure.
We got that?
Sure.
Okay, awesome, thank you. My third question, if I can continue, Mr. Chair, is what is the asset test for SNAP welfare in the state of Michigan?
The asset test for SNAP welfare?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Rep. I came here prepared to talk about this issue.
Sure, so we have an income test, needs-based income test in order to receive SNAP assistance, correct?
Rep, again, I came here to talk about this piece. I can't
Well,
speak to that off the top of my head.
This is still quite relevant and germane to the work that you do, right? I mean, this is a basic question. Is there a needs-based test? My understanding is yes, there is. But is there an asset test? And you're not sure if there's an asset test in order to qualify for SNAP welfare in the state of Michigan?
Representative, I'm telling you that we ask for a large amount of information prior to making a determination about an individual's eligibility for SNAP benefits. If they don't provide that information to us, if they don't provide the Social Security number, et cetera, then they're not verified for their benefits or approved for their benefits.
But if they have a second house, a $2 million house on a lake, would they be eligible to receive SNAP assistance? You're unsure.
Well, no. What I think you're asking is if somebody submits an application that would indicate that they have more or live where that doesn't make sense or appears to be off to our staff, that would trigger that front-end eligibility referral to the OIG's office so that an individual in the instance that you're describing here would not receive benefits.
Okay, another question I have might be in addition to my 5 questions, but when you go through and try to find an error rate, and you have that $58 window of an overpayment or underpayment before it's considered an error, above or below, correct?
Correct.
Is that including, say, if an individual is prescribed Adderall and then they're selling that Adderall on the side on the black market? Is that part of the income needs test that is part of the qualifier for their qualification?
Rep, you know that I could not respond to this hypothetical that you're laying in front of me.
So it probably isn't, right? That's not part of the overall test that you guys do. Is that correct?
We do not ask people if they illegally sell Adderall in order to get benefits.
So it is possible that they could be doing it and qualifying even though their income is over the needs test requirement.
Representative, again, I can't engage in this hypothetical scenario that you're laying out. I'm just here to talk about
But
what
we
we
all
do
know,
to make
but
sure
we all
that
know the
benefits are
answer that
accurately
it
issued in
could
the state of Michigan.
and it does happen. We all know that.
I don't know that, Representative. I'm sorry.
quite confident. I'll go on the record saying it happens.
Thank you for your
Okay,
feedback.
my 4th question for you is you said that you reward catching errors upstream. Do you penalize not catching errors downstream?
In what way? Could you be more specific?
You said your employees upstream, if they catch an error that was made earlier, they get rewarded for catching that error.
We have a calculation that's built in for an individual within our universal caseload system that tracks the type of cases that they do, the complexity of those cases, and they'll be awarded, a certain point total relative to that. If they're able to meet their point total for the day, it's considered, having met their goals for the day. What we've since added to that calculation is an incentive around if you catch an error that was done in a queue that came prior to that application coming to your desk, then you'll receive some point benefit that recognizes your success in catching that error.
And what about the people earlier in the process who might have missed an error that created the opportunity for the error to be caught earlier? Do they get penalized if they were making an error?
Well, we continually engage with our staff around efforts to train them on changes,
So
ask
no.
better questions.
So
Like
no.
we said earlier, we've rolled out these new tools around what the interview guide is, optical character recognitions to make sure that people aren't entering in things erroneously on their computers, et cetera. And so, the goal is not to be anything other than supportive and encouraging of our staff as they navigate an incredibly complex and difficult process. And as we go through week over week or month over month, because of the iterations and the feedback that we're getting on a daily basis, we're able to see it might be in a certain county, it might be in a certain region, it might be a certain error type that is starting to become more prevalent than others. That to us is a trigger that says you need to go out, re-engage with the staff, and make sure that they are up to speed on what needs to be done and why. And so if and when errors are being made, we want to make sure that we're proactive in reaching out and engaging our staff on helping them correct them.
Okay, so there is a reward for catching errors made earlier in the process, but not a penalty for causing the error in the first place as it works through the process.
Well, again, when you're talking about errors, you've got agency errors and you've got client errors. And so if you're asking, do we penalize?
Agency errors.
So you're only talking about agency errors?
Right.
Yeah, again, if we're seeing instances where we can do more or be better, we are not sitting back and saying that we hope the problem fixes itself.
Okay.
We're trying to be aggressive and proactive in partnering with our staff to make it happen.
Sure. My last question, Mr. Chair, if I may. All right, so what are the total number of employees at DHHS?
The total employee count at DHHS is north of 15,000.
Okay, and how many of them are working from home, and what is the work policy if they are?
Again, I'd have to refer you to the Office of the State Employer on work from home policies, Representative. If you want to talk about SNAP, I'm happy to discuss it.
Okay, so if I reach out to DHHS and ask how many of those 15,000 are working from home and what is the work policy, DHHS will be to get that information to me?
Well, I think you'd have to work with the Office of the State Employer.
I'll ask. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for, the words of affirmation, the work that you're doing and that you have done as it relates to the successes with the work that this committee has done. So thank you for that. Unfortunately, here's where it gets a little rough. Mr. Knezek, I'd like to address something with you directly. Following my Oversight Committee meeting last Tuesday, where the food stamps report adopted by this committee was presented, I was made aware that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, your organization, provided a 12-page counter report, which only went to Democrat members of the committee. But don't worry, I got a copy of it, and I've obtained that, I've read it, read this report despite your department's best efforts. And this is the exact type of behavior that really causes me to distrust things that I'm hearing before us, and is disheartening to me. By this type of behavior, I mean not just slipping a report to only one side of the aisle in a secretive manner, which basically was to try to undermine the credibility of nearly 9 months of work here, but I mean even more, how this 12-page prepared report by MDHHS undermines nearly every single key finding in the food stamps report before either agreeing that all of the recommendations are at least possible or stating that you're already working on some of them. The prohibition of out-of-state purchases, for example, one of them. MDHS, this behavior following this oversight on Tuesday with this report, frankly, is most of our interactions have been exactly what I've talked about this fourth fictitious branch of the government, the administrative state, overstepping its bounds. And I feel like that is something that was overstepping its bounds, giving a 12-page report to only one side of the aisle. Hopefully, this will never happen again, especially considering the flexibility contained in the federal rules of which we talked about today. Hopefully, we can work together on these issues now instead of your department trying to undermine the work that we did secretly every step of the way. Because of the fact that MDHA spent nearly $17 million on a website that we're not fully utilizing on the front end, because obviously fraud is a very big issue. We have an entire department that is created to try to stop it. We need to utilize that website to its best abilities. We're in 2026, and My Bridge's application still allows for guest accounts, which we can talk about at another time. Still doesn't have the opportunity to add a photo or attach documents button anywhere on the front end, and we still have an error rate that will for sure give us a penalty if it's not in check, which it looks like some of the work that you're doing will get it in check, but there are other states that have gotten it in and under order. And so, again, I feel like this report was unacceptable, and that's not how business should be done. So I don't know if it was you, Mr. Knezek, or someone in your department that did that, but choosing to do this business is the exact reason why I always question motivation in these meetings. So with that being said, there being no further business before the committee, this meeting stands adjourned.
Good job, Doug. Thank you.